Please enjoy and play safe.
My mother's very beautiful, and she was a single mom. And so I think when you're a kid and you have a single mom, that in a way, all men feel like wolves. I remember walking with my mother, and guys would whistle at her, or cars would start. They'd circle, and it's very predatory, and it's very threatening. Especially if you're a young kid and you don't feel like if something went sideways that you could do anything about it, or so you start to imagine all these versions in which you could, and it just ignites your imagination in a way, and you kind of, I think, see the world in a slightly, you see it through the filter of your imagination.
Written and directed by Ryan Gosling, Lost River is about a family who struggles to survive in a town that's quickly being demolished into oblivion. The family is late on their house payments, and there seems to be little hope for their home to not eventually get bulldozed. The mother, played by Christina Hendricks, takes on a job in a world she's never seen before, while her oldest of two boys tries to help while stealing copper from decaying structures. That's the reality of the film, but it's only half the story. Like Ryan Gosling said, when you're young and you can't quite figure out how to help, your imagination is often the only thing that can truly save you and your family. And that's when the decaying structure of Lost River becomes a fairy tale. Writer-director Guillermo del Toro, who knows a lot about putting a fairy tale scenario within a real-life setting, said that Gosling was, quote, finding the magic in the ruins, end quote. This could not be more perfectly stated. Living within such a terrible situation, kids can romanticize the truth to help process everything. The director shows the contrast in several different ways. The most obvious is in the story. The truth is that the family is broke and the bank does not care. The bulldozers do not care. Everywhere is being torn to shreds, and they are one of the few families that remain. But what if the reason for this harsh reality was because of a curse on the town? A curse that somehow could be lifted and all would be right again. Lost River is like two separate genres uniquely blended together the same way that Del Toro blends a magical world with the harsh realities of war. Gosling shows the contrast between the real world and fairy tale with its brilliant use of cinematography. His director of photography was Benoit Debie, who has had a long relationship working with Gaspar Noé in Irreversible, Enter the Void, and Love, Spring Breakers with Harmony Korine, and the devilishly dark Belgian film Calvaire, which is incredible considering Debie got to shoot two of the most iconically bizarre, unexpected dance scenes ever with these two films. When filming the stark reality of Detroit, Debie used mostly natural light using super fast T1 lenses, while a lot of the fairy tale elements show worlds in dark, gritty reds and greens like a Mario Bava film. And then there are the names of the characters to keep the audience in this magical world of fantasy. The love interest is named Rat, whose best friend is a pet rat but also lives like the creature. A rat builds their nests by digging into the ground, making pathways and chambers to live. And here we have Rat doing the exact same thing, protecting Grandma, perfectly casted, with Barbara Steele pulling the darkest version of a Norman Desmond character a la Sunset Boulevard. One can't forget about the fairy tale antagonist named Bully, played by Matt Smith, none other than Doctor Who. A character so bizarre, he drives around the ruins preaching his good word to his desolate kingdom, void of followers except for his sidekick, Mouth. Lastly, the protagonist's name is Bones, who literally takes the bones out of the structures for survival. Portrayed by Ian de Casticker, Gosling found him through a casting company where actors could send videos into the director and they did not need to have an agent. Ryan Gosling had two things he wanted to see from the possible lead role. The first was he wanted them to recite "Nothing Gold Can Stay," a poem by Robert Frost. The second was to do a dance, no matter how silly or how weird. They could pick any song they wanted and dance to it however they thought seemed fit. But nothing tells this story better than the decaying structures of Detroit, mixed with the macabre underworld, as well as the fantastical city of Lost River. Growing up in Canada, Gosling was enamored with Detroit. It seemed otherworldly. It was the United States. It was the birth of Motown, as well as Ford and the Model T. And let's be honest, he probably really dug RoboCop too.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
He didn't finally see Detroit until Making the Ides of March with George Clooney, and he knew there was a story in there he needed to tell. Afterwards, he traveled back to Detroit, taking photos with his phone to remember all the important historical buildings that were crumbling or being purposely destroyed. Then he went back again with a Canon 5D camera. Then he went back again buying a red camera to ensure the beauty of these buildings were never lost. Some of this footage was used in the final film. He wanted to tell a story about the world of Detroit, but without being tied down to the socio-political aspects of Detroit only. He wanted his themes to stay universal, which is why he brought in the fairy tale aspects to the city. And while most of the sets and structures, and even some supporting actors come directly from the city, completely untouched and improvised, it's not difficult to see the relationships Gosling creates between the locations and his characters. Look at the perfect match in colors between Bones and the structures he walks past. The director tells a story visually through the use of color. No dialogue, no backstory, just a poetic visual explanation. Bones removes the bones from structures to survive. In essence, he is these structures, and it shows through the color of his bag. There is a stark difference between the falling structures and the pseudo-world of the Grand Guignol. Every obsessed horror fan has heard of this place. It was tucked away in an old chapel in Paris starting in 1897. The audience got to witness short plays of grotesque horror stories featuring gouged eyeballs, spurting blood, decapitations, acid-melting faces, skinning people alive, real-life crime reenactments, serial killers, and of course, your fair share of tantalizing sexual fantasies. Lost River features a version of the Grand Guignol as a place where the mother can work to make money to pay off her debt. It's another bizarre bridge for the film where reality and the fantastical intermingle. The film is a surreal journey. Sometimes it feels like you were stuck in a David Lynch world like a Twin Peaks or a Mulholland Drive. There's other moments when you think you're in Labyrinth, crawling through garbage, nesting inside a rodent's world. Sometimes you're convinced you're watching an episode of The Wire for all its poverty and violence. Sometimes you feel like it's another Gosling NWR collaboration, but dirtier, with Gosling directing the full feature and not just second unit photography like he did in Only God Forgives. Sometimes you feel like it's Batman Returns all over again, and with the brilliant music of Johnny Jewel tying everything together, the realities and the surreal become one. For a man who loves the paranormal, Ryan Gosling makes a film that feels as close to being a ghostly tale without fully being one. But if there's one thing you should know about this film, it's that it's a very independent film. There are fewer plot points than most films, which can slow down the speed of Lost River dramatically. Not every scene drives plot or character motivation. This is not a film for everyone. This is probably not a film for most. Your average movie-going audience member on a Saturday night will leave the theater questioning what the hell they just saw and why. But I'll tell you what they probably saw. They saw Ryan Gosling rip out his heart, imagination, and soul and slam it inside actual film for them to understand exactly who he is. And that's the beauty of Lost River.